All right, my name is Joy Garin. Some of you people know me. I'm a Principal Engineering Systems Analyst. Love that title. Try filling that out in a little what do you do job, you know. But I recently joined a company called Symbotic that makes robots. So if you saw that presentation this morning with the swarms and the connects, we use that technology. So for warehouse automation. For those of you that have known me a long time, you know that I used to work for SolidWorks up until 3 weeks ago. So I decided to actually go into the real world and do what I taught. So it's been a fun experience so far. But anyways, I had this presentation all set up. I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm going to do a little bit of winging it. I had a laptop where I had a virtual machine all set up, and apparently my license expired. So I cannot use the laptop, so I'm going to do it. I knew what was installed on here, so I'm going to do the best that I can to show you everything that you need to see, okay? But what we'll do is we'll go through what's new in SolidWorks, and then we'll have hopefully a Q&A at the end of it, okay? All right, so when the team at SolidWorks got together and decided what the focus was going to be for 2013, they wanted to basically improve the user experience, improve process efficiency, and increase some data flexibility. And we're going to focus on each of these topics. So within the user experience, I should say this is really the admin user experience, they redesigned the workflow editor. So how many of you, raise your hands if you've been using the current admin tool to create workflows? Awesome. What was one of your biggest complaints? Zooming was one, right? I'm sorry? Right. One of the biggest things was it didn't fit on the screen, and it's kind of like a little, kind of ugly. Notification editor was even worse, right? And then, so we've done some work, and I mean, I'm still saying like it's going to take a while for me to get rid of that. But they've done some work on basically improving that user experience, particularly for people who have to design workflows. And we'll get into each of these items. And then also, in the area of process efficiency, we finally, yay, have the delayed in-state notifications. So if something has been sitting in a state and it exceeds X number of days, you can now have it resend notifications. And you can choose how often you want to resend those notifications. So if you give them like a week to do something and they still don't, you can just hit them with a new notification every day. Now I know some of you would like that to be every hour, but we had to have reasonable limits there. All right, the other thing that's new is parallel workflow transitions, where you're actually going to send a workflow. I mean, you're actually going to have a transition that has to be approved by more than one person, but now you don't have to create all those silly transitions and the voting stuff to make it happen. It's part of the workflow definition now. And then we have the user collaboration pop-up dialog box, which I will show you. And we have something new called version-free variables. Version-free variables, don't get all excited back there because I'm about to burst your bubble. All right. Version-free variables allow you to change the value of a variable on a data card. If you designate it as being version-free, you can change it without having to check it out, and you don't create a version. Now I'm going to go burst your bubble. Sorry. I can see you cheering in the back there. It's not version-free if you're writing the value of that variable back to the file. So if you have that property mapped to the file, you are in fact creating a version, hence no free. Okay? And then there's been some improvements to the paste as reference. In the past, when you took a document and you pasted it as a reference, you could include it in the BOM, but one of the things you couldn't do was designate a quantity. Now you can designate a quantity. So we'll take a look at each of these. Okay? The workflow editor, one of the first things you'll notice is that it's a cleaner looking interface. Now, I'm actually just going to bring this up and show it to you. Some of the key points here with the new workflow editor: navigation controls, zoom in, zoom out. You can actually fit the whole thing. It's a larger area to work in because if you remember the panel on the right-hand side that had users and groups that you could do permissions, that is now gone. Now everything you do by clicking on the state or on the transition. You'll notice that the appearance of the states and the transitions is very different as well. And we also use color to show you clearly what type of a transition it is. So, for example, you'll notice the red line there. That's an automatic transition. And you'll notice the green lines. That is a transition that that needs multiple approvals. Okay? So we have this visual feedback now as well. And I'm going to tell you the good and the bad from my own experience of working with the workflows, what I found annoying and how you can mitigate that annoyance. Okay? All right. So let's take a look at some workflows first. I just so happen to have a demonstration vault that I installed prior to coming out to SolidWorks World. And if I go into the workflows here, you can see, let's just take this workflow. Pretty simple workflow, right? Everybody's familiar with the states and the transitions. Now over here, you notice these buttons. Zoom to area. Ooh. Come on, crowd, go wild. Zoom in and out. Yeah, baby. Zoom to fit. Actual size. I'm sorry, what was that? I don't know. I doubt it. All right. But essentially, you can see that we've made some definite improvements in this area with being able to control what you're looking at. Okay? Now, let's talk about annoyances, right? First of all, how do you assign permissions to these states, right? You know, the old one, you know, you'd had the panel over here, you'd pick the group or you'd pick the user, and then you would pick the state, right? And you'd be able to do it. But now you notice what happened when I pick the state? It pops up this dialog. Everything that you want to do now, you do in this dialog. So when you used to, remember the buttons that you used to have on states? And each of the buttons did a different thing? Well, now you click on the state, it brings up the dialog, and you do everything from here. That includes sending permissions, assigning revisions, right? If you're going to have a revision assigned on that state, you would assign it there, and setting up notifications. Okay? So this is also where you would do the change icon. So you'll notice we still have the pig, so don't get alarmed. Pig's still there. All right? So if you make your changes here. Now, I promised I would tell you about annoyances. Watch the cursor as I mouse over. Right? When it's a finger, you can click on it. See the little hand? Right? When it's over here, you're resizing it. Right? So when give me that. When you get the double cross, now you can move it. For those of you that were hoping crazy arrows were gone, no. You still have to deal with crazy arrows. Okay? But they are a little bit different, right? Ugh. See that? I actually wanted to move it, and what happened? I wasn't patient. I didn't wait for the arrow, right? So here you can see that we still have those arrow controls that are a little bit crazy. Did I say they were crazy arrows? All right. you get over here. If I move that out of the way, then I can get at this, and then wait for the arrows. So I just wanted you to understand the good and the bad, okay? It's not, in terms of dealing with the arrows and dealing with the repositioning, it's not really much worse than what we had before. It's just different, okay? So it takes a little bit of getting used to. Okay, anybody want to guess what the little document over here means? All you workflow admins? Initial state, right? So this is the first state. When you check in a document, this is the state that it enters into. So you don't have that button that you depress anymore, okay? Anybody want to guess what the little bell means on the transition? That's right, notifications. And what was the check mark? I forgot. Oh, this one is going to do something with the revision. Okay? So essentially what we have now is we have this graphic feedback on the versions and states. Now I'm going to apologize, you're not going to see my face because I'm going to sit down behind the terminal again. Oz. Some of you got it. Okay. All right, so we have, here we've got the typical, this is what your state name is, this is your description, this is whether or not it's initial state. Remember the ignore permissions in previous state? That's the setting here, right? When you want to add permissions, actually, why don't we just do this? Why don't we just do a new workflow? We'll just call it new workflow. And we have our initial state. And who's going to have permission? So I want to add users and groups. So I want the engineers and the administrators to have permission in this. For the engineers, they can do these things perhaps, but not this and not this. And for the administrators, they can do everything. So you get the idea. It's still, you still have that same functionality there. It's just presented a little bit differently. For revision numbers, typically you don't have a revision on the initial state, so we'll just bypass that one for right now. And I'm just going to say OK. And I'm going to move that state over here. And I'm going to put in a new state. And we're going to call it pending. OK, so I have the pending state. Click on it, change the icon. This is going to be my little waiting for approval, the manager. Okay, you missed that one too. That's fine. Managers will have this one, and the managers will have complete permissions in this state, let's say. And I'm just going to leave the revision numbers alone in that one, and I'll just do the one more state here, and we'll say approved. Okay, and we'll say that managers will do that. Stop it. Okay, and we'll move this. You go over here, right? So we have our three states. Now on this state is where I want the revision scheme to be assigned, right? So I come into revision numbers, and I want to use an alpha revision scheme here. And I want to have it increment by 1. Every time I come in the state, it's going to increment by a value of 1. Okay? So that's how you go about assigning your revision schemes to these states. Any questions on that so far? No? Okay. All right, so now let's talk transitions. Actually, let's go back to this state right here, pending. Because what we want to do here is we want to add some folder notifications. And you notice here, let me do that again so you can see what I did. I went to notifications, and I said I wanted to add a folder notification, and I want it to be at the root level of the vault. And I say OK here. Now what type do I want? Delayed in state. So if it's in this state for more than a specific period of time, like 5 days, then every day I want you to re-annoy that person. Okay? wait a minute. Who's going to get it? Who's going to get the notification? So let's see. It's going to be the engineers, perhaps. Let's just say the engineers. So the engineers are going to get that notification every 5 days. So that way we'll let the engineers whose job it's not to do it go beat on the one whose job it is to do it. That's just being me. I'm sorry? Yeah?
Can the notifications go to Outlook now in 2013?
No, they always can go to Outlook, but that's a function really of how you set up your mail. So let me finish this and I'll show you what I mean. So if I say OK here, you notice here where it says message system? This message system is where you determine how you want your mail to be distributed. Do you want it to be the database mail system, or do you want it to be SMTP? And if you want it to be SMTP, what's your Exchange server name? What's the user from the Exchange server that you're going to use? Now, a word of caution about, I know we're sort of diverting off topic here just a tad, but a word of caution about using SMTP is that they have to be in the Exchange server that you're using, right? That mail address has to be something that is in the user definition. So when you define your users, the mail address has to be in there. The other thing is we don't store that in a table in the database. So we have no record of who you sent notifications to, essentially. So I know for some people that's a concern. Whereas if you use the database one, there's actually something called a notifications table. Okay? All right.
Do you have multiple mail servers in your organization?
No, you can't. Usually you use one mail server just for the sending of the mails. The address that it's going to use is actually coming from the user itself. So if you go and you look at the user, this user's going to have an email address in here, and it's going to use that email address. Okay? All right. So we showed you the delayed in state notification. Let me see. So I showed you the navigation controls. We showed you that the panels were eliminated. We showed you the streamlined states and transition boxes. And the state and transition dialog boxes, as we said, were unified. And I think we haven't gotten there yet. We're going to get to transitions next. Okay? So now we get to transition. So I want a transition that's going to go from here to here. And in that transition, we're going to say submit. I'm not going to do anything too crazy here. And this is where you determine what type of a transition is it. Now, you have the normal transition, and now you have automatic transition. And like I said, if it's an automatic transition, which means that you're typically going to have it pass from one state to the next state, usually if it fulfills some sort of a condition, right? You can make that selection here. And now, of course, you have a parallel transition. Parallel transition means it's going to be approved by more than one person. When you have a parallel transition, you now have to do something called, you have to create something called a role. Okay, and a role is, for example, if I say I want to add a role, this is going to be reviewers. You can call it whatever you want. And then you determine which users or groups are members of that role. So you would say, I want to add a member to this role, and I could say, well, all administrators, and from the engineering team, I want Daniel, Jeff, and Jeremy to be people that can also participate as a reviewer role. And then, in the parallel transition, you can now start to set up, this is just the regular who's got permission to execute the transition, right? So this is different than roles. This is who's got permission to actually execute the transition. And then, of course, you have the typical conditions by which you can pass through a transition, right? So this would be like, well, if the value of revision is empty, don't let it go, right? Or if the value of revision is A, follow this path. Okay, so this is the typical transition conditions. And then you have actions. All right, actions are the typical things you're used to. Set a variable, increment the revision, execute a task, right? So if we go to actions, this should look familiar to you. This is the same dialogue that you had before, okay? And then you've got, of course, this was what was previously called, was that button called revision counters? If you remember the transition dialog box, right? The transition dialog box at the top had the name of the transition, then beneath it, it had conditions, then beneath it there was a button. And if you hit the button, it brought up the ability to increment the counters in the revision scheme, okay? And then below that, you had transition actions, and you could hit the add button and add the transition actions, okay? And then, of course, now you have notifications. So you can say, okay, who am I going to notify? For this project, right, this is where you get into the whole specifying your notifications again, okay? Yeah, I need to add recipients. Okay, so I want to add these persons as the notification recipients. Do you want to allow dynamic selection? This part is unchanged. Again, like I said, the only thing that's really changed here is the presentation. Oh, wait a second. I'm missing one thing here, though. What am I missing? Add recipients, engineers. Let's say I made that one dynamic. I want to go back to here. Oh, yeah, I missed something here. I won't take my glasses off again when I do this. I totally missed this box. All right. When I define the role called reviewers, right? Remember I said that this is going to be a parallel transition, meaning that I'm going to have more than one person say yes to this thing or approve this thing, right? So it's here, when you define this role, you get to say how many reviewers have to approve this before it can proceed. So if I say 3, then it knows that there are 4 people in the reviewers category, and 3 out of the 4 must approve it before it can pass through the transition. Everybody understand? Okay. So that gives you a good overview, and you notice that because that's a parallel transition, that you get the double green arrow. Can everybody see that? Oh, you know what? Guess what? I can make it bigger. Did I say that you have Zoom? All right. So you get the idea here, right? You have those aspects of the system that have been redesigned. Okay. Let's look back in here. Oh, I want to look at the transition condition interface. So on the transition, stop that, turn that off. Oh, turn that off. All right. So back here, if I go to conditions and I want to add a new condition, hello. All right. So I want to add a condition, and I want to say that the condition is going to be that, let's see, revision value. You'll notice here that you don't have to remember the exclamation point equals for not equals. So we've put that nice UI for what it is that you want for the satisfaction of the condition is now in a nice little list, right? So I can say I want text is not equal to nothing, right? For configuration @ symbol, okay? So now I've put a condition on that transition. And you notice that every time I add something here, I'm getting that visual feedback on the transition, right? So I've got a notifications set up, and I have some conditions set up. So I'm getting that graphical feedback. Okay? All right. Continuing along. The notification editor, I sort of gone there before. When you get into the notification editor, it looks a bit different, but it's pretty straightforward. It's like what kind of when do you want to be notified? You want to be notified when somebody adds a file? Do you want to be notified when somebody changes workflow states, checks in, checks out, exceeds the deadline, or is delayed in state? So again, another way of presenting the same types of things that we had before. All right, full line highlight option. All right, this one is pretty easy to explain. If we go into the vault, you know how when you get a really, really long set of columns here? Like, let's say I've got a lot of custom columns that I'm displaying in the column view, right? And you click on something, you can't really tell which column you're looking at from way over here. So now they have this option. Under display where you say display options and you want full line select. And what it does is if you look here in the 2012 image, when you selected a file, it only highlighted the file name, right? In 2013, if you have this option on, it will select the entire line, making it easier for read. It's like when you're in an Excel file and you click on the row so that it'll highlight the whole row so you can see the whole thing. It's very similar. Well, how many people participated in beta? Oh. All right. It was in beta that when this option was introduced to people, it was like, oh, yay, we finally got whole row highlight. And then they wanted to right-click and execute a command. Well, guess what? Go find a place to right-click. You had to like scroll all the way down and find some white area, right, where you weren't touching a file. So after that little bit of feedback, it became an option. Some people still like it, some people don't. So we made it optional. There I go again. SolidWorks made it optional so that you could choose whether or not you wanted to use it. Okay? All right. Improved a toolbar layout for the BOM. Okay. One of the things you'll notice is for the BOM contains in Where Used tab, they changed the way that all of those options are presented there. And if we go ahead and we look at this, let's take an assembly and let's go to the Contains tab. All right, so you'll notice here that these are the version options, these are the configuration options, and then over here you've got the which levels do you want to see and the reference editing. One of the things you'll notice is that as you make this window smaller, right, they close down into sort of like iconic menus. That was a problem on 2012 and prior, where if you were manipulating the window size, you were losing part of your menus. So it was a redesign to accommodate that sort of thing. And you'll notice it on the Where Used, you'll notice it on the Contains, and you'll also notice it on Bill of Materials. Okay? All right. So better use of space, better collapsibility when you're resizing windows. All right. The toolbar integration within SolidWorks itself has been improved as well. So if I start SolidWorks, this used to be my complaint, you know, the 20 icon toolbar. I'm one of those people that doesn't like this window to get very long. I don't like doing this. The only time I like this is if I have dual monitors, right? Everybody does know that you can rip the task pane off and put it on the other monitor, right? Okay, so you can just sort of like rip that thing off, put it somewhere else. Now try to get it to go back, okay. All right, so this whole customization up here at the top, I'm one of those people that only has the file name up here. This is the display in its own column options. So if you go into Enterprise PDM options and you go into the view settings, this is where you can say, well, I don't want to see version number in a column of its own. I don't want to see checked out by in a column of its own. I only want to see it displayed in preview, right? So I typically go ahead and modify these settings to suit my personal taste for how I like viewing that window, right? So once I have my settings, you notice that I have it very small here, and I basically like to have it down tight like this because I like to maximize my screen real estate. Notice what happened to the icons when you did that, right? When you did that, your icons sort of disappear, right? So you notice that all of these icons over here disappear as you make this bar smaller, but now they have the little flyout. So the ones that disappeared are now available from the flyout. It's just much more usable. Okay. Okay. So that's basically set up so that you can work a little bit better without having to constantly drag that bar around. Okay. All right, one of the other things that you'll notice when you're working in SolidWorks is when you're checking in. Like you've got a design open in SolidWorks and you're going to do a check-in, and you always had to do a check-in and then you had to hit the X to close everything. Well, now you actually have an option from the check-in dialog to close the files after check-in or reload files after check-in. It's an option that just saves you just a tiny bit of time, okay? The admin list, all right? For those of you that work in the admin tool a lot, right? And I'm going to close that. I'm not going to save that workflow, and I'm not going to save that workflow. You'll notice here I have this recently used dialog, right? The recently used is showing me all of the things that I've done in here. Right? So this is when I opened up the Quick Start workflow. Right? That recently used dialog keeps all of the most recently used commands that you had right there so that you can quickly go back to it if it's something that you're still working in. Okay? So I guess I was playing with Daniel's permissions too. All right. So now we have, this is one of my favorites. Process automation and efficiency. You may have noticed when I went into Daniel's user thing here that there's a whole lot more options here. How many people notice that? Cool. All right, so what you can do here is now you can put people's images up there, their pictures. So I've taken the liberty of putting a few pictures in here. Daniel, you're pretty hot. Daniel's email address. Let's see, any kind of user data, what column view you want them to have, phone number. Whoops, that's not the backspace key. And for those of you in the front row, no, that is not George Clooney's phone number. And then websites. Now these are kind of cool. Facebook. And let's see. LinkedIn. Twitter. What else? That's good enough. Presence note. You can read that back there? Very good. All right. So I'm going to set these up. Now the rest of the properties here are the typical things, right? What group do you belong to? What administrative permissions do you have? What are your folder permissions, state permissions, transition permissions, permissions per file, search cards, bill of materials, tasks. Everything else here is the same as you know it. Some of these things look a little bit differently and have some quick access to things. But once I save this, now if Daniel has done anything in the vault, so I'm just going to log off right now, and I am going to log in as Daniel. Oh, Daniel's got a notification. No changes really here. Notification still nice, clean looking. Let's see. See if anybody left me any SolidWorks files that I can use to add to my vault. Probably not, right? Oh, what's that? No, that's mine probably. We'll just take something else. All right, so let's just we'll add the what's new PDF file. Okay, and one of the things you're going to notice here is you notice that it's checked out by Daniel. Ah, hey, look at that, right? So what happens is now wherever you see the username, you can mouse over the username, and it's going to give you the information about that user. The nice part is, in our offices, we use Microsoft Communicator. So that communicator button will show up here as well. And you can open up a chat window directly to Daniel. I can send Daniel an email. I can go into Facebook and send Daniel a message, right? So these buttons can be configured to take me to specific tools. Yes?
When the communicator shows up, does it show its status?
Yes, it does. Okay. Now, the presence note that I put in is there as well. So remember when I typed in the little presence note? So that presence note can be changed by the user and can convey information. It's a little bit more personalization and opening dialogue and communication, just a tad bit easier. Okay? Basically the same. Can the user change that? Well, I'm logged in as the user right now, so let's go see how much I can do. What kinds of permissions does Daniel have, first of all? Yeah, Daniel's got everything. So Daniel must be in a group. Engineers? I give engineers that kind of permission? No. We're going to stop that right now. No. All right, as far as administrative permissions go, no siree. All right, maybe can, let's see, administrate add-ins, templates. Do you know why you have to give people the can administrate users? Anybody? It's the only way you can customize your menus when you're in the Windows Explorer view. I don't like that, but it's a fact. All right, just looking through here to see if there's anything else I'm missing. I'm wondering if that is a necessary option. Okay, so Daniel should now have a limited permission set. Okay, so if I right-click and I go to Settings, nope, that's not it. Daniel, where are you? Okay, Daniel. Well, I did give him the ability to administrate users, so of course he can do that. Let me go ahead and take it away, just so we can see. And if I say open, yeah, Daniel still has permission to change himself. Okay? So you can delete the picture, you can modify a picture, you can modify these things. Okay? I don't believe that he's allowed to change others. Well, oh, yeah.
And that's fine. There's just no way for them to do it from the vault. Is that correct?
Well, I know you can change the presence note from here, right? So if I was to go into, let's log in here as Daniel, right? And if I look at what I can do here I can change the presence note, which is just the note that's being displayed to people, but can I do anything else? Oh, that's all you wanted? Oh, then we're done. I think that's going to actually have to be done by somebody who's got permission to the admin tool. So if I was to actually try to get into the admin tool right now as Daniel, and I go to users, no, he can only do the change password. So he's not allowed to actually administrate that panel. Okay? All right. So we have that ability there, and again, we talked about the ability to hover over it. The chat. I didn't realize that Microsoft Links was available as well for chatting. Version-free variables. Let's talk a little bit about version-free variables. Okay, so the version-free variable, if we go back into this vault, and I happen to have some files in this folder here. Oh, no, I don't. Oh, wait a minute. Who am I? I have an identity crisis whenever I do this. Admin. Oh. SWW. Shh. 2013. It's top secret. All right, design data. All right, I want this part file here, and I chose this part file because earlier I changed the data card on this part file, and I added a variable called cost. So if I go ahead, and of course I'm not in the right state, bear with me here for a second. Just want to see if anybody's got any files on here that I can borrow. Control box. Oh, no, that's the... I don't want that one. That's the vault. Documents. I'm sure I can steal something out of one of these, right? Project, design data. All right, I'll just take this file here, Control C, and I'll put it in a different location. I'll just drop it here. Control V. Did I not do that right? I'm sorry? Where is it? Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. We'll just go to this project right here. All right. Drag and drop this in there. And, all right. So you see I have this cost variable. And everybody knows that when you drop a file in the vault, it becomes revision 1, right? And if I check in the file, Oh, figures. All right, so I checked the file in, and now cost is, the attributes that were assigned to the file that were taken out of the file are what constitutes version 1. So if we look, I have version 1 of the document, right? Now, if I were to check this document out, and let's say add an attribute here and save this, you notice what happens here? Right, as soon as I save that metadata, right, that metadata change is causing me to have a version in the file, right? Now, the same thing's going to happen right now if I modify cost, because I haven't declared cost to be a version-free variable, okay? So if I go into the admin tool and I go into variables, you got to be an admin. All right. Go into. I'm the one that put this. Stop it. SWW2013. I'm the one that put the password on it too. Why did I get 2 of those? Or did I just not notice that I had? All right. All right, so if I go to variables here and I go to cost, you notice that there's new checkbox here, version free. So I'm going to make this a version free variable. And what this is saying is that I'm allowed to change the value of this variable without creating a new version. Okay? And you can choose whether this is only going to be for the latest version or all versions. So once I've determined that I've set the variable up in this manner, if I go back into, oh, Daniel's got that. You guys are laughing at me? You feel my pain? All right, Daniel. All right, so here we are back here at Daniel, right? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to check this document in. And it is at version 2, right? And now, it should, why isn't it letting me do that? You should not have to check this out to do that. I'm sorry? No, it shouldn't be. But it could be. No. No, I can't change that. What the heck?
He changes permissions if he only has limited access.
Oh, I might not allow him to do that. You're right. All right, good point. All right, log off. All right, Daniel, you're fired. Let me go back in as admin. Plop the door in. And we'll check it in. No. All right, I don't know what's going wrong. Clearly, I've done something wrong. But you shouldn't have to do anything to this. You should be able to modify this value. What am I doing wrong? It's got to be my card. Yeah, but I just logged in as admin. So, and I put it in as admin. I need to debug this, and I don't want to do it in front of you guys. Trust me, there is a version-free variable in there. The only, this I have to do, I used an existing card, and I really should have gone ahead and done my own. I know I got it working on my machine, but my virtual machine is dead, so I can't actually show it to you on my machine. All right, so, I'm sorry?
You don't have to update the card at all, you just have to change the variable information. So that's
Yeah, you basically make the variable. Now, the thing you have to be careful of, right? What makes a version-free variable version-free is you cannot have it tied to a property in the file. So if it was writing back to the file, then it's no longer version-free. Okay? But for general purposes, you can have a series of version-free variables, and they can be on the card, and you can modify that information without creating a new version. And you don't have to check the document out to do it. Yes?
So if I have a cost data on version 10, is that same value to keep rolling forward?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
If I enter a cost value on version 10 of the file,
Yep.
is that same value to roll forward on version?
It's the same as any other data card. It's the only thing with the only, oh, I see what you're saying. I don't know. I have to look.
The concern would be is, well, parts change, did the cost change?
I believe that the option here is if you say only on the latest version, then you can have a value at that version, and if you say for all versions, it changes it for all of them.
My assumption also is that all users then can make that change to variable-free variable.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
So you say all versions, if you get a previous version of the file, it's going to show the same information to you.
I'm sorry?
Does it make that change retroactive if you say all versions? If you pull up version 2, does it now have your new value?
Depends on whether or not what you've chosen here for the option, for all versions or latest version.
So if you say all versions, it will do that.
My understanding is yes, but I haven't actually. I guess I'm not going to say absolutely until I actually do it because I'm not positive. But I assume. I mean, you know what happens when you assume. My assumption is yes, that's what it does. Okay. Yes.
So if this file, the cost value for goes to the state, issued state, right, it's not divided at that point, can that variable still be set to obey that state?
No, you can't really, can you? I have to think about that one. I don't know the answer to that one. We can try it after. All right. I don't want to hold everybody else up. I want to continue this. Okay. All right. Last thing, paste as reference. I think everybody understands paste as reference, right? You grab a document, you paste it as a reference. You could say whether or not you wanted to see that reference in the bill of materials. Now you also have a quantity field. And you can actually put the quantity that you want to see in the bill of materials. Okay? And that's it.
Does that affect all configurations?
I'm sorry?
Does that affect all configurations?
What do you mean here?
Show and bill?
Um,
Or configuration?
I don't think that.
Because if you, let's say you have a calculated bond and you change the quantity of something that's paid for the reference, it just affects that individual.
Well, normally when you're doing something like this, there's no configurations in that document. You're saying how many of these there are. And if there's a configuration above that that it's linked to, then the same rules would apply as to what shows. Okay?
What if the part what that was an assembly and had configurations in every bomb?
You do a paste as reference? I don't think you'd paste as reference on something like that. Paste as reference is typically when you're taking a non-SolidWorks document typically and attaching it to some other document. Oh, you're attaching it to an assembly?
Yeah, an assembly with configurations that had different bills of material per configuration. That's where he's coming from with this question.
Yeah, I think it's just that you just have to go into each configuration and modify each one. They're all going to be 5 or whatever.
Yeah, but that could have multiple, a part could have multiple configurations too. Typical, yeah, you're right. Yeah, why is that showing apart?
Well, I think in this case, when reference to the part, it has to do with how it flows up to assemblies above it that follow it. But the question becomes, how does that behave when you start attaching it to an assembly?
In an assembly, I actually, if you want to stick around, we'll try it. Let's give it a shot. We can make a real quick one. But for the rest of you, thank you for coming. And have a great evening at the special event tonight. Yes?
The 2012 version of our workflow, now bringing it into 2013.
Yeah, no problem.
It's just going to mask gaps with your color, arrows, and that now.
No, actually, it's just, the arrows are actually going to be exactly the same. It's not going to move the arrows. The only thing that's really going to change is the appearance.
Any problems with the logic on like transition criteria?
Nope. Nope, all of that stuff came across. That was my number one concern.
So I use a lot of
Yeah, no, there were no problems whatsoever. All right, so what do we want to test? We want to test a couple of things, right? First off, I want to find out why my variable free value didn't work. Alrighty, cards, file cards, quick start card. I'll get rid of that. And let's just put in a variable. I'll call that, we want a new one. That's okay. And I don't know everything. People think I do, but that's okay. All right, only users and groups. Oh, I probably didn't have this permission set. Edit version free variable data. Okay. And let's say that is cost. Yeah, I think I had a permission error before. All right, so we call that cost. And if we look at, oops, wrong place. I want this one here, groups. Open groups, properties. All right, folder. So it's in here, can update, where is it? What did you say? Folder permissions. There it is, edit version free data variable. All right, so on the folder permission here, you notice here on the folder permission I have this new permission, edit version free variable data. And then this, of course, I'd have all of those permissions, and then I'd have that permission. I don't need that, but I'll do it anyways. Make sure I have all of that and that. That's okay. And we'll save it. I just gave everybody the permission. So who do I get for a user admin here? And we'll say explore. And we'll drag a part in here. And we'll check it in. All right, see how it's open? I don't know what I was doing before. But you notice that the part, for those of you that wanted to see the version-free variable, you'll notice that the part is actually checked in. Right? Well, no, sorry, I lied. Stop that.
I noticed you haven't
All right.
measured the full line display there.
It is, wait a second. Oh, okay. What? All right, but you notice this is the version-free variable. I had a permission problem somewhere, but I can go ahead and set that and save it, okay? And you notice I didn't check it out. So that's a version-free variable. You're allowed to edit it without creating a version. Now, normally, people want to set a value. The thing that people were trying to do is they were trying to have revision be a version-free variable, and I'm like, why would you do that?
But I guess I'd be curious about an arbitrary, because they want to do things that, well, cost would be directly associated with part geometry, and say, okay, you want a version change to happen. So let's just say I've got data, no data that has, it's just information.
It's still here.
It's
Look,
not based on geometry.
it's in the history.
It's a record of events,
Yeah.
notes. I think of it that way, right?
Yeah.
On a series of notes against the same version.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, goodbye mom, whatever.
We do ECRs, we have a status, we should put the current status.
Yeah.
And you would want that, you wouldn't want the original data to disappear, you just want to keep adding to that information against that version.
Against that version. The only thing you're really going to find it in is I don't think you're actually going to automate the driving of that to something else. You will have that audit trail in your history. Anything that gets done, like here, it shows that I updated it. No, it does not. No.
That's my question about the cost. So
The only option you would have here is you would have to physically label it, right? So you would actually, you know how to use labels? So if you go in and modify label, and you could say, okay, maybe you'd say, okay, cost, and I say changed cost from 0 to whatever I made it, 250, right? And then when you look at it in here, you know, you have that note associated to what you just did. Not to my knowledge, I don't know.